broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Pete Baker with the Big Corp, and very happy to have you join us today for this webinar, Distributed Audio and Selling with Conviction. So thank you for joining. We're going to start in just a minute or two, actually in about 5 minutes. So we have people still jumping in for the webinar. Please let me know if you cannot see my screen or cannot hear me. And I also would like to introduce my good friend and colleague, Steve Doobie, who's joining us from Russ Sound. And Steve will be available to respond to any questions that you may have, any technical questions, either via the chat window. You're welcome to send a chat, or you can just unmute your microphone and say hello or ask any questions anytime. And we'll also have some time at the end of the presentation or webinar to have an open Q&A as well. So thank you for joining us. Looks like we have quite a few people still jumping in on the webinar, which is great. Let me know if you can hear okay. All right. Can everybody see my screen okay? And hear me okay? I'll take that as a yes. All right.
Looks good from here, Pete.
Okay, thank you, Steve. That's Steve Doobie, the one and only with Russ Sound. Thanks for joining us today, Steve.
Well, thank you, Pete.
All right.
And thanks to everyone who's joining us.
Good. Looks like we're still getting some more people jumping in on the webinar. Thank you for joining us today for the webinar, Distributed Audio and Selling with Conviction by the Big Corp and Russ Sound. We're going to start in about 5 minutes, so feel free to unmute your microphone or send us a chat if you have any questions or comments or having any issues with getting in the webinar. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. We're here today to host the Distributed Audio and Selling with Conviction webinar. My name is Pete Baker with the Big Corp, and I'm joined by Steve Doobie with Russ Sound, and we're going to get started in just a couple minutes. So thank you for coming. Let us know if you have any immediate questions or concerns or issues getting into the webinar. Hopefully you're having some better weather than I'm having here. I'm in Minnesota, and we just got hammered with a big snowstorm. So I hope you're having some better luck where you're at, enjoying a little bit of spring. All right, we're going to get started here in just a few minutes. Steve, how's the weather for you out there? Are you getting hammered with any snow?
No, just a kind of a cold, rainy day here in New Hampshire.
Okay. Well, we're supposed to get another snowstorm tomorrow, so I think we had about 20 inches over the weekend. So,
Lucky you.
yeah, lots of shoveling and snow blowing. All right. Looks like we still have a few people jumping in. So welcome to the webinar today, Distributed Audio and Selling with Conviction. We're happy to have you here with us. We're going to start in just a couple minutes. My name is Pete Baker with the Big Corp, and I'm joined with Steve Doobie from Russ Sound, and very happy to have you joining us today. We'll get started in just a couple minutes. If you have any questions, just unmute your microphone or send us a chat in the chat window. We should have some music on hold. All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. And thank you for joining us today. The webinar today is Distributed Audio and Selling with Conviction. My name is Pete Baker with the Big Corp, and I'm joined by Steve Doobie with Russ Sound. And we'll get started in about 2 minutes. Just waiting for a few more people to join. It looks like we still have people jumping in. And we're going to get started here pretty quickly. If you have any questions, just unmute your microphone or send us a message in the chat window. And we'd love to hear from you. We'll also have some an open Q&A at the end of the webinar. So if you have any specific questions about Russ Sound products or anything we cover in the webinar, we would be happy to discuss that with you at the end of the webinar. All right. Well, I think we're going to get started. We have a pretty good attendance so far. So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Pete Baker with the Big Corp, and I'm joined with Steve Doobie, my good friend and colleague at Russ Sound. And Steve will be on hand to respond to any technical questions or sales questions that you may have during the course of the webinar. You can just send them in the chat window, or feel free to unmute your microphone if you have any questions, and we'll have an open Q&A at the end as well. So the topic today is selling with conviction, and it's specifically related to distributed audio, but this concept or topic I think can be applied to many other areas of sales and business development, I guess. And just want to take a moment to introduce myself and tell you a little bit about my background. My name is Pete Baker, and I'm the president of the Big Corp. I have a global sales representation company, and I represent some of the finest brands in consumer electronics, including the brands that you see at the bottom of the page here: Savant, Near, Artisan, iRoom, Russ Sound, Klein Tools, Sim2. These are all premier brands in the consumer electronics industry. And prior to joining the Big Corp or founding the Big Corp, I was an integrator for about 20 years, a licensed low voltage contractor, and literally worked on hundreds or thousands of projects in my career, wiring the projects, designing the projects, selling them, and so forth. And I built up a leading integration company in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul in Minnesota, and eventually sold that business and went to work for a company called RTI, which you may have heard of, and was the VP of sales and marketing at that company for a dozen years, leading sales, marketing, tech support, all of the customer facing departments in that company for 12 years. And I left a couple of years ago and I founded the Big Corp. And my role at the Big Corp is to help these leading brands expand globally in key markets, not just with sales representation, but oftentimes with marketing and business development and training and so forth. So over the years, I've had the great opportunity to meet with dealers all over the world, and of course meet with consumers as well. In my role as an integrator. And what I love to do, I'm really an integrator at heart, and I love to meet with dealers all over the world and hear about their challenges. And it really resonates very well with me because I met with so many consumers in my career as an integrator. And part of our job, part of my job as an integrator, and I'm sure part of your job or your dealer's job, if you're a rep or a manufacturer or industry professional, is dealing with objections. And that was something that I definitely experienced very often in my role as an integrator. And I can tell you that I used to really get a chuckle when I would meet with consumers and they'd come into my meeting room and I'd sit down with them and say, well, why don't we start off by just, I would want to learn about their project, learn about their lifestyle and, what their needs are. But eventually I would say, why don't we listen to a few different speakers so that you can hear some different speakers that we have to offer. And I had a nice speaker wall in my meeting room. And inevitably, nearly every one of my prospective clients would say, well, hold on a second, Pete. Before you go any further, I want you to understand that we're not an audiophile and we don't want great quality sound. We just want to have some tunes in our house and just want to listen to some music. So we don't need to have the best quality sound. In fact, we don't really appreciate good sound quality. I can't tell the difference. And I've heard that from dealers very, very often when I am selling premium solutions, either amplifiers or speakers, and certainly with video as well. I hear my customers don't care about sound quality. They just want to have some tunes in their house. And I understand that consumers say that all the time. I have no question in my mind. I've heard it myself. But history tells us that consumers really do care about sound and video quality. And obviously, we've seen that with video quality, that consumers really do appreciate good video quality. And the thought of going from high definition video to standard definition video and going back to 300 lines of resolution, let's say, would be a pretty miserable experience. And I think that sound quality has really, or audio, let's say, the audio category has fallen way behind video because there hasn't been a lot of discussion about high resolution audio. And I think that we're going to see more and more of that moving forward. And consumers really do care about sound quality and video quality. They just don't realize that. And if we look back at 1983 with the introduction of the CD, that dramatically improved the audio quality from the cassette. For those of us around my age or maybe a little younger, I'm 52, maybe 53 actually. I have to think about that. when I was a kid in high school, the Walkman was a big deal, and we listened to a lot of cassettes. And when the CD came out, I remember my friends and I just, being in awe about the improvement in sound quality. And actually, the CD was the fastest adoption curve of any consumer electronics technology ever introduced. And that's based on my conversation with the Consumer Electronics Association of the United States. They said that the CD was the fastest adoption curve of any consumer electronics technology ever introduced, which is really shocking. And a big reason for that is because the sound quality was significantly improved, and consumers really appreciated that. I certainly did. And I don't have any magic ears. In fact, my wife will tell you that I don't hear well. But and then we moved on to DVD, which again dramatically improved the audio and video quality from VHS. And that again was a fast adoption curve with the DVD. And same thing with Blu-ray in 2006 with the introduction of Blu-ray DVD, dramatically improved the audio and video quality from DVD. And of course, moving from rabbit ears to satellite TV, I remember when that happened, and that was a dramatic improvement as well. Moving from satellite to or rabbit ears to satellite television. But this is the one that I find very interesting, is now we're seeing a big paradigm shift from MP3 audio to vinyl. And you might argue that when we moved from cassette to CD, that was rapidly adopted because it was a better format. And some of that may be true, that it was nice to just be able to skip to the next track and not have to fast forward. But now when we look at the shift from MP3 audio to vinyl, it certainly isn't an easier format. With MP3, you just click on the track that you want to listen to. And vinyl, you need to pull the album out of the sleeve and put it on the turntable and fire up the turntable and put the needle on the right spot. But we're seeing a massive surge in vinyl sales and also turntable sales now. And the reason for that is because consumers, and especially our younger generation, they really do appreciate the sound quality improvement from vinyl versus MP3. And I would encourage any of you to try that experiment and listen to an MP3 track versus vinyl, or a high-res audio track versus CD, and you will definitely appreciate the sound quality difference. And now we're seeing a paradigm shift again with these different streaming audio platforms. Spotify has been a real global powerhouse for streaming audio, and now we're seeing a lot of that business shift over to Tidal because you can get high fidelity and high resolution audio from Tidal, and a lot of consumers appreciate that and want that high res audio quality. So I'm obviously have spent a large portion of my career in the control and automation category, but I also had to learn a lot about high res audio and obviously distributed audio because I've sold that for many years as well. And in the course of my research, when I first started learning about high res audio, I didn't know anything about it, and I searched for information on it, and I started with this simple definition of what is high res audio. And the definition says lossless audio that's capable of reproducing the full range of sound from recordings that have been mastered from better than CD quality music sources. CD quality being 16-bit 44K. So that's our frame of reference. So that's interesting, but 16-bit 44K didn't really mean a whole lot to me because I didn't know how that related to high-res audio. And not just in a numerical sense, but also in a more three-dimensional sense, if you will. And I found this great visual aid that really helped me to understand it a little better and bring some clarity to the topic of high-res audio. And if we look at the original in the middle image that you see there, that's a real nice, clear image, and that's easy to look at and easy to understand. If we look to the left and look at the MP3 or AAC or really CD quality image, that's a pretty miserable image that none of us would really want to watch. Visually, it's not very pleasant to look at. And then if we look at high-res audio, that very closely resembles the original. And looking down at the sine waves at the bottom, the original is a nice smooth sine wave, very easy to look at and certainly easy to listen to as well. Where 16-bit 44K, there's a lot of missing information and gaps or sharp edges, if you will, with that sine wave. And then 24-bit 192, which is high-res audio, is a much smoother, much more closely resembles the original, much easier to look at. So that really helped me visually to understand high resolution audio. And I guarantee you that if you listen to high resolution audio and then go back to MP3 or CD quality, you're not going to want to stay there. And I do believe that this is something that we should all be talking with about in our industry, certainly, and certainly with dealers and consumers, end users, so that they understand and can maybe appreciate high resolution audio. Because I do believe that if we roll the tape forward in a few years, everything will be high resolution audio, because it is an appreciable audio difference, just as visually we can see the difference with standard def and high resolution video. We can certainly appreciate that in our audible senses as well. Another objection that I hear quite often is that my customers just want a few separate systems. And I've been selling distributed audio for a very long time. Certainly as an integrator, I sold it. I've sold it with RTI, definitely had distributed audio solutions. And many of the brands now that I'm involved in, I'm selling either speakers or amplifiers and distributed audio solutions. And so this is a topic that I've discussed for a very long time. And one of the things that I hear quite often is my customers just want a few separate systems. They don't want to have a distributed audio system, and especially in some international markets in the Middle East and in parts of Europe where you're using poured concrete walls and not lath and plaster and wood framing like we see in the U.S. More conventionally. It's more of a concern. But even still, I would argue that having worked with consumers on hundreds of projects and over 20-year career, I had the unique opportunity or great opportunity to meet with many of those consumers and work with them on several home projects that they worked on. And I would very often ask them as an exercise, do you feel that you got your investment back on the technology that you put in your home? And the response was almost always, very consistent or very similar from these consumers, where they would say, look, I don't think that I got every single penny out of it, but I absolutely got some of the value back when I sold my home, and it helped me to market my home more effectively, having that technology in the home. And that was whether they had, just a distributed audio system and some technology wiring, local area network wiring, and maybe some even fiber wiring in the house, versus even having, dedicated home theaters. They always would say that they didn't regret it at all, that it was a great value in their home and helped them to market and sell that home. So I would also say that if you have a home, one right next door to each other, and one of the homes is wired with technology and the other one isn't, I absolutely believe the one with technology wiring in it is going to sell uh, better and get a higher price and have more value, marketable value in the home. So I look at this just like central air conditioning. If you were an HVAC contractor and a consumer came to you and said, I'm building a new home and I really would like to have some cooling for my home, would you recommend to that consumer that they put in window air conditioners in every room where they could just buy those at the local hardware store or home improvement store? Or would you recommend a professionally installed and designed central air conditioning system for that home? And I obviously am going to recommend a professionally installed solution. And that, I believe, is going to add value to the home as well, rather than just window air conditioners. And the same is true with the central music distribution system. And this is no knock on any specific brands that you might see in the image on the left. There's a lot of good separate solutions out there and streaming solutions out there. I'm not trying to disparage them in any way, but I am here to promote and discuss the benefits offered by a central music distribution system and a professionally designed music distribution system. If you look at the solution on the left where you're using a bunch of separate boxes, I spoke with someone recently that had seen a project with 24 separate boxes in the system. And to me, that is really concerning, because that's 24 separate boxes that need firmware updates, or that could lose a network connection, or could lock up, or have points of failure in some way, shape, or form. And the solution on the right has one network connection, and it's one integrated box that provides an elegant, high-res, whole home distributed audio system, and it can't be purchased online. It needs to be installed by a professional integrator. And when I was a professional integrator, I always tried to find solutions that were more custom-centric products that my customer could not find online. And that added more value and more credibility to me being on that project, because I would say, look, I'm designing a professionally installed music distribution system that's going to add value to your home and bring you years of enjoyment. So the question comes in, you might be thinking, well, this sounds great, Pete, but how do we do that? How do we sell these high resolution audio options or distributed audio options in a market with so many low resolution options or single room solutions? And I would answer that you don't sell with your wallet. I've had many dealers that I've met with over the years all over the world that have said, I could never sell a distributed audio system for, $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, whatever the price may be. I would never, ever, ever be able to sell that to any of my clients here. And I think nobody would buy that, like none of your clients ever, no prospective client. Well, what if you had some rock star that came knocking on your door and said, I want a really nice system for my house? Are you saying that they wouldn't spend the money? So I think that sometimes we as salespeople rule out the opportunity before we even fully consider it. And maybe we focus on the price of the box rather than the overall experience that consumer may be striving for or may be interested in. And I've certainly fallen into that trap where I've kind of sold with my wallet and said, well, you probably aren't going to want this because it has a high price tag. And then the customer says, well, wait a second, well, tell me about that. And you find out that actually they would be interested in that, and that has great value to them. So don't focus on the price of the box or sell with your own wallet or your own budget. Focus on the overall experience that you're responsible for delivering to your client. And remember that we're not providing a boombox for a tree fort. We're providing a professionally installed entertainment system in a beautiful home that's intended to provide years of family enjoyment. And my goal as an integrator was always to design a system that my customer would use every single day of their life. I wanted it to be so easy, so intuitive, and so accessible and convenient for them that they would use it every single day of their life. And I wanted it to be a source of joy and, one of their proudest or most enjoyable features of their home. And I think that we all need to focus on that and focus on making sure that whatever system we design for that end user customer, that it's something that they really enjoy and use every single day. And if you look at the investment that they make in that system, going back to my comment about the price tag, sometimes we get hung up on the price tag of, a streaming audio system that might be a few $1,000s and think that, boy, that's a big investment and they're never going to buy that. Well, if they use that every single day and they enjoy that every single day and they live in that home for 5 or 10 or 20 years using it every single day, then what's that value look like then of that, couple $1,000 investment that they've made in that system that their family is enjoying every single day? I think that then there's great value in that. And I think that that's something that we should definitely be speaking with consumers about, that extended value that they get from that system that's being installed in the home, not just in the components, but also in the wiring and the value it brings to their home as a resale value. I think we also need to remember why we go to professionals, why you go to a doctor or a lawyer or a dentist. I don't go to my lawyer and say, I drafted this document and I want you to charge me for it. I go to my lawyer and say, I want you to draft a document for me with given your professional experience and expertise, and I'll pay you to do it. And same with a doctor or a dentist. And consumers are the same way when it comes to technology professionals. I just think that sometimes we don't take as much pride in our profession as we should. And, there's been a lot of discussion about that over the years, and the analogy that is often used is the plumber has no problem charging for a service call and the electrician has no problem charging for a service call, but as integrators we often have problems charging for a service call. And yes, we strive to provide a heightened customer service experience for our customers, but it also means that we need to raise up our confidence and pride in our profession. And remember that we are the professional, and don't be afraid to take control of the project or the sale. The consumer came to you for a reason. And this really struck me a couple years ago when I was still with RTI, and I was in at a dealer event hosted by a distributor in Canada. And I had a dealer come up to me at my table, and I had all the new remote controls on the table, and he said, what are you showing new at the show? And I said, well, we have all of our new remote controls here. And he said, oh, well, we can't sell remote controls here. Nobody in this market will buy remote controls. They're too expensive, and they just want to control everything with an app. And I said, so nobody here will buy any remote controls? And he said, no way I could sell a remote control here to anybody. They just won't buy one. And so we had some interesting discussion back and forth, and he eventually moved on to the next table. And the very next person that came up to my table said, oh, cool, you have the new remote controls here. And I said, yes, I do. Do you have a business in this market? And he said, yeah, we're right in this market in Vancouver, just like the previous guy I was talking to. And I said, well, do you sell remote controls here? And he said, yeah, every single project gets one. And I said, well, that strikes me as really interesting, because the previous person I was talking to said he he can't sell remote controls in this market, and nobody will buy them. And the dealer laughed and he said, no, we put one in every single project, and we tell the consumer that you really need to have this in order to have a enjoyable, intuitive experience with your system. And they ask about app control, and I say, that's not going to be a very enjoyable experience for you to control your TV. You really need to have a professionally programmed user interface to enjoy that system. And so that really struck me as I was really, really curious about that and intrigued by that. And so I started to think about what might be the difference between those two. Here they are in the same market. One of them says I can't sell that product or sell that product category, and the other one says I sell it in every single project. And I believe that the difference between the two was conviction. One of them was convinced that every project really needed a professionally designed user interface or a proper user interface for that system. And the other dealer either wasn't convinced or didn't know how to convince his customers that they should have a proper user interface. And I believe conviction is very powerful. And I love this quote from Zig Ziglar, who's a very famous public speaker and salesperson in the U.S. And he says, when we are convinced as a salesperson, our demeanor, body language, voice, inflection, facial expressions, everything communicate to the prospect that we fervently believe we're offering something of value. Conviction comes from knowledge and a feeling that what we're teaching, doing, selling, etc. is absolutely right. And that's really powerful. When you have that conviction and you believe in what you're selling, if you believe that your customer should have professionally installed distributed audio system and should have technology and wiring installed in their brand new home that they're spending, hundreds of thousands of dollars or maybe millions of dollars building this home. If you're convinced of that and you can convey that to your customer, that's pretty powerful. And I believe that if you combine passion and conviction, it promotes belief in others. And I love passion. I love seeing passion in salespeople, in professionals. I think that it's a very, very powerful ingredient, but it can also be a little bit dangerous too. When if this has a little different color on it or different outfit on it called ego, then that can be disturbing and can work in opposite. It can turn people off. But passion plus conviction is a powerful combination when balanced properly. And I do believe that it promotes belief in others. And the example I would use is with my kids. I'm passionately convinced, let's say, that I have 3 of the coolest kids on the planet. And over time, I could promote that belief in you. I'm sure that many of you in the audience who have your own kids might say, listen, my kids are the coolest kids on the planet, and I don't care what you say, Pete, but over time, I believe I can promote a belief in you that I actually do have 3 of the coolest kids on the planet. So just to kind of wrap up and review some of the things that we've covered here, always remember to deliver better sound in your systems and incorporate support for high-res audio. Even if they don't use high-res audio right now, make sure that you're designing a system that will deliver better quality sound. And remember that this is a system that they're going to enjoy for many, many years to come. And remember that the user experience is the single most important element in the project. And don't compromise on that ever. Make sure that the system is absolutely easy to use and strive for that goal that I discussed, that it's a system that they will use every single day and enjoy every single day. And remember to deliver a system that is the best option for your customer, not necessarily for you. Always try and think of it from their perspective and don't fall into the trap of what you may want or what you may afford or what may be of value to you. Focus on the customer and what their needs and desires might be. And as a professional, remember to deliver a professional grade solution. If you're offering products that are just off-the-shelf options that they can buy at their local big box retailer, then that degrades the value, I believe, that you're offering to that consumer. If they can buy that off the shelf, why do they need you involved in the project? And when you offer a professional grade solution that they can only get from you, that adds more value to you and your business. And this is a practice that I recommend all of us look at every single day. I certainly look at it in my business, why anybody should buy from me and from my company, the Big Corp, and look at it, what benefits am I delivering to my customers, and what benefits are you delivering to your customers? And I also think that this opens up an opportunity for you to differentiate yourself from your competition. If you're talking about high-res audio and you're talking about the value of technology wiring in the home and maybe better quality sound in the home, then and your competitors are not talking about that, I can tell you that from my personal experience, that does add value to your business and does add more reason for that customer to buy from you. And from my personal experience, having met with so many consumers over the years, there were many times where I had a consumer come back to me in a bidding situation or competitive situation, and they said, "We're going to go with you, Pete, because you came up with more ideas and were more creative than anybody else that we met with." So I would recommend that you try and differentiate and sell differently from your competition. And I do have an article coming out on that in Residential Systems in the next month that might be interesting to you. So as it relates to Rust Sound, just to give you an example of some of the things that we have to offer that would allow you to differentiate from your competition, and some of the great benefits that we have to offer, in particular with this one piece, the MCA88X, which is a phenomenal distributed audio product. It requires no control processor. There's no programming. There's no internet sales. It comes with a free app, as many apps as you want. Mom, dad, the kids, they can all have access via any of their iOS devices or Android devices. It has built-in streaming for all the services that you see at the bottom. Rock solid performance. These products are really bulletproof, and Rust Sound has such a great warranty and such a great service experience for dealers and end user customers. It's really unmatched in the industry. And there's no competition as well with online sales because, as you may know, RTI or Rust Sound has a very well-known and respected program called the RCI program, Rust Sound Certified Installer Program. So any of these products that are RCI products, they must be unlocked by a certified installer, Rust Sound installer. So that protects you from any online sales or competition online that you might experience. So it's a phenomenal product. If you have any questions about that, please shoot me an email or Steve an email. My email is pete@thebigcorp.com, and that'll be in a future slide here. So feel free to let me know if you have any questions about the MCA88 or any of the other amazing award-winning products from Rust Sound. And so we're just wrapping up. I want to thank you for taking the time. I know that you have a busy schedule, all of you, and are busy professionals, so I appreciate you investing the time with us today and learning about Rust Sound distributed audio products and how to sell with confidence and conviction and passion. And if you'd like a certificate of achievement from this webinar today, just simply shoot me an email at pete@thebigcorp.com, and I will be happy to provide you with a personalized certificate of achievement for today's webinar. So thank you very much for joining us. now I'll open it up for questions and answers. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to unmute your microphone, and Steve and I are standing by to answer any questions you might have. All right. Any questions? Okay, Steve, are you still there?
I sure am.
Okay, fantastic. I don't think we even had any chat messages today, so we've got a pretty well-behaved crowd today. So thank you all for joining us today. If you have any
Thank you,
questions, feel free to shoot me an email at pete@thebigcorp.com.
And thank you, Pete.
All right. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.